Great. Like Lucas said, I'm Tyler. You can call me Tyler. That's what I go by usually. So we're going to kind of just jump right in this. I wasn't exactly sure what level people are at with resumes, if people had them. Actually, who has a resume right now that is on their computer? Raise your hands high. That's pretty good. Is it updated? For everyone that has an updated one, raise your hand high. Okay, that's important too. So we want to be able to do that. Can somebody give me their own definition of what a resume is? Anybody? Nobody. EJ.
Is a formula describing who you are as a person and the work and skill experience that you've had. That's what resume is.
Good. Anything else anyone wants to add?
I put your strengths on there.
Strengths. What's your name?
Lewis.
Lewis. Nice to meet you, Lewis. Cool. Okay. Just wanted to see. So largely we're going to be covering what a resume is. There is another document that is used, which is a CV, and that's more for academic and research purposes. So largely it's more for resumes is what people are going to be using. It's kind of like a little quick snapshot of your professional self, right? So you put your work experiences, you put your strengths in there. There's different styles of resumes, and we'll kind of cover that in a little bit. Which can highlight your strengths. But really you're just advertising yourself, right? So you're trying to get a position, a job, anything of the sort. And this is one way that you're advertising to them, hey, look at me, let me come in for an interview. So you can check out what I'm about. So yeah. There's three different types that we're going to kind of look into really quickly. There's a chronological, the functional, and the combination style resume. And they're pretty self-explanatory. For the chronological, this is the most common one that people see. So it's all your resume is in reverse chronological order. So the stuff that's most recent and the present stuff is at the top, right? And then you kind of work your way through and you put the years, the months, and everything you've been in those. Then you have your functional ones. This is where you focus more on your skills and you put your skills at the top, and it's not necessarily tied to a position. People do this one when they maybe have had a gap of time in between positions, and they don't want employers to see that because that doesn't look so good if you don't have a consistent history of employment or anything like that. So that's not as preferred, but then there's a combination which combines the both of them. Does that make sense? Combination, great. So you put your relevant skills and then also your chronological work history. If you guys have questions anytime, please, yeah.
Cool. Dave?
Yeah.
Cool. What's your preferred one? If you had to pick a certain one that you like the best,
Yeah.
works the best, what would it be?
Yeah, the one that I use is a chronological. We're going to take a look at mine really quickly in a second to kind of see what one could look like. It depends on what's going on, right? I think that chronological makes sense for me because it kind of puts a map for whoever I'm interviewing with of what I've done. The combination does work well too. You can put a lot of your skills up top front, but then you also do have that chronological list. Like I said, I wouldn't go for the functional unless if you needed to. Sometimes people also do that, if it's a different field than what you're used to working in, kind of break your way into it. Good question. Paul? Okay, cool. In your resumes, we'll get to that in a second. In your resumes, you do want to tailor them though, right? So each of the positions that you apply for, you're going to be kind of altering your resume to what they're looking for. So when you apply for a job, there's a job description that tells you the different skills, the tasks, and everything that you have, right? And you want to use their own language. You can actually copy and paste and replace stuff into your resume to make it sound like, hey, this is what we're looking for, and then you just say, this is exactly what I have. This is exactly what you said, and I can do that kind of thing. Does that make sense? Yeah, cool, good. So we're going to go through some of these do's and don'ts really quickly. So I didn't tell you if it's a do or a don't. So we're going to go through one by one and figure out as a group if it's a do or a don't. So do you all think that you should use bullet points in a resume. If you think it's a do, raise your hand. If you think it's a don't, raise your hand. Good. No, yeah, you should definitely do that. It helps to make it concise. You'll see it in a second. You can kind of put the different things that you've done and achieved in your positions. Going beyond 2 pages, is this a do? Raise your hand. Is this a don't? Does anyone want to say why it's a don't?
Because it looks like we have so many to look through.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. They will look at your resume for like maybe 30 seconds initially just to like get through. If there's thousands of people applying for the same position as you, they don't have time to read through the entire resume, right? So your first 10 to 15 lines on your resume should like pop and draw them in so that they'll spend more time to look into it. If you have just pages and pages, they're not going to read it.
I've heard in certain situations, if you can fill up an entire second page, you should. So like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, so I said go beyond 2 pages. My resume is 2 pages. It's preferred to do 1 page, which is a very common thing. My profession's a little bit different with student affairs, where like I can kind of expand into that a little bit, but you don't want to just have tons of like filler, right? You want to be concise and get to the point really quick. Yeah. So I mean, it depends. I usually do around 3 to 4 maybe max, because you don't want to have like a long list. I mean, you can do it if you have less things and you just kind of go more into details and say like, and it's a larger position. I think like when you get further into the future with an actual career, you may put more bullet points to that, right? But while you're in college here, you can probably fit your stuff into like 3 bullet points. Good question. Any other questions? This is great. All right, moving to the next one. Use personal pronouns like I, my, and me. If you think you should do it, raise your hand. If you think you should not do it, raise your hand. You guys, why don't you do this? Why am I up here? Thanks for that pity laugh. Great. So yeah, you shouldn't be referring to that. It's a professional document, so you should really work on like being in that kind of language. And then how about for the next one, quantify whenever possible. If you think you should, raise your hand. If you think you shouldn't, raise your hand. Does someone want to, not everyone raise their hand. Does someone want to like define what quantify whenever possible means? Lucas? Yeah. Do you want to give me like an example, a random one?
Instead of saying like I grew or growing leadership skills by maybe saying leading a committee of 8 members in order to raise like a certain amount of money for profile. So
Yeah.
it gives like quantifiable data.
Yeah, because that's easier to measure exact data and numbers than just lofty things, right? Good. Using fun fonts. Do you think you should do this? Raise your hands. Oh, come on, you don't want to look fun? Like Joker. Have you ever seen Joker font? It's pretty great. It's pretty fun. I love it. Or like Webdings. No? Okay. If you think you shouldn't use fun fonts, raise your hand. Yay. Professional document, right? That's why we're not going to be using fun fonts. And it should be easily readable because they're not going to look at your resume long, and if they can't read it instantly, they're going to just toss it, right? And then proofreading. If you think you should proofread your resume, raise your hand. And if you don't think you should, oh, good. That's why you're back there. No, yeah, you should definitely proofread it like 1,000 times. Proofread it yourself. Give it to someone else to proofread because they'll catch things that you don't, right? Sometimes we get stuck in our own site and like we read something and it sounds perfect, but someone else reads it and they're like, what the hell are you trying to say? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. So it's super important to get different feedback from everybody. And then the last one, include like personal details like height, weight, and your social security number. If you think you should, raise your hand. Yeah, just put, and if you think that you shouldn't, raise your hand. Cool, good. Yeah, you don't really want to have your social security number on just like documents you're just like kind of throwing out there, right? That's kind of dangerous. Great. So we're gonna take a second and take a look at my resume really quickly. Wow, so cool. Garamond, super out there, right? So a good way to kind of structure it, you obviously want to have a header for your resume that has contact information, an address they can mail you something, a phone number they can reach you at, and an email. You want this at the top so that if they're interested in reaching out to you for an interview, it's right there, and it's easily accessible to them, right? And then because you all will be kind of getting out of college here in a little bit, preferred, you should have your education at the top. Once you start getting into your work career, you don't really need this at the top because you'll have your professional experience up there. But for now, you'll have your education there, right? Go into your work history, different positions that you'll have. So right now, I'm the graduate assistant for Residence Life. Actually, I just made this today. I need to alter something. Proofread, right? This is the time. You're right. So it kind of goes in. You can see that I'm not getting into too many bullet points. Sometimes it gets a little hard where you want to say all these different things, but you can not, right? You make it much more concise. You always want to have good verbs. Definitely don't use the same verbs over and over again because then that just gets annoying. If you just say organize, 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 or plan, that shows that you can't really diversify. I feel like I would get really bored reading a resume that said the same stuff. So you definitely want to have these different times that you're in the position so that they can kind of track, right? So mine is chronological, as you can see here. There's different formats. Some people will put like the dates over to the right. It's really just your own style, however you want to make your resume pop. But it should not be like way out there and crazy, right? Because it has to be professional. So looking at it, my resume right now, is there anything that you all have questions about? Comments? Anything? Yeah.
What if you have something that started, say, 2 years ago and it's still happening? You're still involved.
Yeah. So I just changed it, but like a lot of these things said present, right? So right now, if I was half from now, I'll still be up to present because I'm still in that role of graduate assistant, right? So you keep that going. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Cool.
How do you feel about mission statements?
Like objectives?
Like an objective statement?
Yeah, I think that those can be used pretty well. It depends on what you're doing, right? So if I have a cover letter, I'm probably not going to put an objective statement because I can kind of put that into my cover letter and I feel like it's too repetitive. If you're just giving this resume, an objective statement is good. So does anyone know what an objective statement is for a resume? Nobody. Good. All right, so an objective statement is kind of like what your own objective is for this position, this role, right? So like when you're interviewing for something, it's kind of what you're trying to seek out of it. And you want to get away from the like selfish personal statements like obtain this position of data analyst or something like that, right? You want to be have something nice that says like, if you're going for data analyst, it's something like saying how you want to work in the capacity to better some portion of your the skills or the company. You know, that wasn't a good example, but we're good. Does that kind of clear up what an objective statement is? Cool. Any other questions? Yeah.
So you put that on there?
Yeah. So you can put it right above at the top. Yeah, right after like your like info. Put it right above there. Other questions? Yeah.
What are your thoughts about just putting years, like from like 2014 to 2016, or like months?
Yeah. I have done just years, but I think that months really does do it better because if you say 2014 to 2015, I don't know if that means January 2014 to December 2015 or like much shorter. You know, it's not very descriptive to be able to inform like the person that you're trying to get a position with. So I like months.
I was just going to say something to add on to that I heard that Grand Chapter over the summer.
Mhm.
They said if it's like a summer lifeguard position, that's self-explanatory. You don't have to put like June to September.
Yeah.
But just something to add.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I kind of put like for one of my positions I was just summer. I just put summers of 2014 and 2015, which kind of is like that. So, good questions. Any others? Cool. So that's kind of like the meat of what I was trying to display to you all. Sorry, super inside joke. I'll explain it really quick. Joe was on philanthropy committee with me, and he always tried to steal my ideas and steals my presentations and everything. He actually made a comment right before I started saying that this was his presentation, so I knew what he was going to do. But yeah, do you have a question?
No, can I get this presentation?
Yeah, I can share it with you all. Yeah, for sure. I mean, Joe has my login information for it, so he can just give it to you if that works for you.
All these guys have seen that one.
Yeah, this is mine. You all, it's old. But yeah, so what I am going to like challenge you all to do is to kind of pair up with another brother that maybe is in the same kind of like education field as you are, to like swap resumes and take a look at each other's and kind of proofread through. Use some of these this information to take a look at it. Go through those statements in those bullet points and make sure that they sound good, right? Make sure that they have quantifiable information. Make sure that it has good verbiage and sounds kind of eloquent. It doesn't have to be like fancy language if you don't use that fancy language in that position, right? You don't want to be overbearing. But definitely you want to highlight your own skills. And if you need help figuring out what your own skills are, there's assessments and everything where you can figure that out. And I can also help to lead you to areas where you can learn that. So, any other questions about anything? Yeah?
When do you include a cover letter and when do you not?
Yeah. A lot of times they'll ask for a cover letter. It'll say, and sometimes you can just throw a cover letter. I think that like in my mind, from what I've done, I'll give you an example from the Presidential Search Committee. When they applied, they had their CV and they had a cover letter, right? And that was to show that they were applying. There was a smart move by somebody that wasn't necessarily applying, but they were like kind of put their toe in the water. They just gave their resume. So it's not like they officially applied for the position. Because in your cover letter, it's kind of, that's where you say like, I'm interested in this position and everything of the sort. But by just giving me, if I just give you my resume, it doesn't mean I'm applying anything for you, right? Does that make sense? Cool. Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit more about what a CV is and like when any of us would maybe need to use it and or if we should start creating it now?
Yeah, so I'll go back to that slide really quick. A CV is largely used for like academic stuff, research stuff, right? So sciences and everything. Michael has a CV, I'm sure. But that kind of tracks a lot of different things. It tracks publications, different presentations you've given, so it like shows all of your experience, and it's really detailed. Where like a resume is like a quick thing, where it's just like a page, and like this is who I am, like check it out. The CV is more elongated, and they have to dedicate more time to dig through it all. Like in the Presidential Search Committee, I read a CV that was like 60 pages long, right? So it like had all of their publications, all their presentations and conferences and everything like that. So does that kind of clear up a little bit? Cool. And I'm not an expert on CVs. I haven't written one. I'll probably have to start doing that. But Michael could probably help you if you needed to do a CV. Anybody? Sorry to volunteer. Cool. Any other questions about any of this information? Yeah?
What's usually the most difficult like problem you've run into putting together your resume?
I think sometimes it's hard to like describe the different things. Like I'm a person that I'm like always like in the moment when I work in a position or something, right? So then when I have to step back and say like, all right, I have to pick these few things that defines the things that I've done. Sometimes that's hard for me because like there's just a lot, right? And to kind of go through that. Formatting sometimes sucks, right? I don't know how to make it work sometimes, and it takes me a long time to figure out how to make everything go in the right spot. So, a suggestion for resumes, what you can do is you can have like this long running resume that has all of your stuff on it. It can be 6 pages long, it can be longer than that. It just has everything that you have, and you can tailor a resume to a specific position. So you take this huge document and you're like, oh, this position and this, but not this one, they all apply over here. So I'm going to put it into this resume to give for this position that I'm applying for. Paul,
Are you gonna send us your resume?
do you want my resume? I mean, sure. I can send.
Phrase that better, 'cause that was my question. Just for formatting purposes.
Yeah.
That's why I want your resume.
Okay. Basically, he's just going to take copy and paste, right? I've done that actually, literally. So, not a bad thing. If it's written well, go for it. Yeah.
Is there only one way to format a resume?
No, there are many ways. One way you should not format a resume is go on to like a Word document thing and just do like the resume thing. Like that's going to be like thrown away right away because it's like they couldn't even put the time in to create a new document. You can format it different ways. I've seen resumes that look way different from each other. It's really however you want to style it. I think that an important part of it is like having a good flow, right? So before I had like this portion, like the education, work history, relevant experience, like over in the middle, because I thought that it looked good. But then it would make your eyes have to go from here to here to here to here, and that kind of is too much. And now it's all on the left side, and it kind of flows a little bit more, right? I think it's important just to be able to like keep the interest and just like make it easy. EJ, did you have a question?
Yeah, so you would advise using the resume template from Word?
No, do not.
I get that.
Is that, oh no. Start over. Take what you have, the information you have in that, and like make your own, right? If you look on the internet, there's like, you can see tons of different styles, and you can make your own style of resume. Yeah.
Yeah, I was, as part of my campaign, I had one of the senior staffers of, like a Senate and presidential race. He was like one of the, assistants to Obama. He said whenever he got a resume, that had the Word template, he immediately threw it in the trash.
Yeah.
He did not even read the name or the experience, he immediately threw it in the trash.
Yeah, good point. See, it's just like, it shows that they didn't put the work in for it, and they're not willing to. Going back to that, what I said earlier about like using their own language from the position, by doing that, it shows that you did your research on the company and that you are willing to put the work in, and that can help give you some brownie points to get an interview, right? Any other points, comments, questions, concerns? Great. EJ.
So what about for your resume if you don't have much work experience? Like, what are the challenges of that? Like also looking for like the way like if they throw your resume because they don't have much work experience, like, that's something like
Yeah. So if you don't have much work experience, that's okay, right? You're so young and you haven't had that time to have those experiences. Sometimes what people do is put relevant coursework from like the classes that you've had, what you've learned, and how it would be applicable to whatever position you're applying for. Don't just put in random things like, oh, another point I want to make is like, does anyone have like high school stuff on their resume? Good. Don't. You shouldn't, right? Unless if you're cool like Michael White, graduating top of his class, but no. But like you should not have stuff from high school because that just shows that you haven't done enough, and it just looks bad. Yeah.
When do you add your GPA?
So if it's above 3.0, I would say tack it on. You don't necessarily need to include your GPA, but it looks good if you have a good GPA. But if you have a bad GPA, like you don't want to put it on there, right? Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah, you're right.
I guess another thing for the high school thing, because I actually won an award that was actually pretty notable in the field I want to get to. So would you
What's the award?
It was basically, it was like more so outstanding for athletic training and physical therapy, like assistant.
Yeah. I don't know. I would hesitate to have it on there because it's from high school. But if you think that it really kind of sets you apart from different people, that's what you're trying to do with a resume: is set yourself apart and say like, I'm the best person for this position, and this is why. If that's gonna bring you to there, then I would consider it. So, yeah.
One thing I want to add is just like be really careful with like religion bias and like stuff. Like people will say that they don't like act on religion stuff. Like I had a Masonic Lodge scholarship like academic thing that I put on my resume, and I had like something for you guys to like, just so you know, like, people will like resume because like Masonic Lodge on it. So like just be careful like not that kind of stuff on there. Some people that will say bias.
Yeah, nobody has to tell you why they declined your resume. And like, if it is a bias thing, like they don't have to say it. They're just like, oh, he's not good enough. There's other people, right? So, good point.
They actually did a study where the resumes that covered, like, that affiliated the person with Catholicism actually received less phone calls back than if the resumes had like Protestant type affiliations and stuff like Jewish or Muslim affiliations were even less callbacks than the Catholic resumes.
Interesting. Something to look out for sure. Good. Good points. Anything else you all want to add? Cool. Going. Thank you all for your time. I appreciate it.